So this is a project about a man named John Cage. He was actually a music composer, very famous and very influential. So this program is a tribute to him, and we're talking about version 2. Version 1 was actually pretty successful, and it ended in the fall of 2020. So let's continue. So who is John Cage? Just a little bit of background on him. He actually was probably the most influential composer of the 20th century. I remember I was a graduate student at the University of Miami in music, and he came and gave us a speech in Gusman Hall, and he got a 10-minute standing ovation. That was how much he's revered. He truly was an avant-garde composer, really pushed the limits. His main premise was that all sound is music. So here are some examples of John Cage compositions. They're all pretty famous. 4 minutes and 33 seconds. Someone actually walks out onto the stage, sits at the piano for 4 minutes and 33 seconds, gets up, and that's the composition. Whatever music you hear while that person is sitting at the piano is the performance. There's another one called Concerto for a Prepared Piano, and there's all sorts of stuff that you put inside the piano on the strings, on the dampers and stuff. And instead of actually having notes, you use a system of charts and durations to play the composition. And the last one, which may have been even Cage's biggest influence, was music of changes. And this was based, as many of his compositions, on the I Ching, which is an ancient system of divination. So Cage and ambient noise. When I hear what we call music, it seems to me that someone is talking, and talking about feelings or about his ideas of relationships. But when I hear traffic, the sound of traffic, here on 6th Avenue, for instance, I don't have the feeling that anyone is talking. I have the feeling that sound is acting. And I love the activity of sound. I don't need sound to talk to me. So that's one of his most famous quotes, explaining just what he meant by all sound is music. So here's the problem you're going to solve. Obviously that this is an existing piece of software, or it's really a system, it's not just a piece of software. The system consists of a MERN stack on, I believe it's either DigitalOcean or Heroku. I can obviously look that up. There's an Android app and an iPhone app too, and I have an Apple developer account. So what you would do is you'd end up using my developer account. Although it gets a little squirrely because it's two-factor authentication, so we have to sort of coordinate when you're going to be on the Apple developer site. But anyway, so what we need to do is send simultaneously record streams of sound at various locations. Send the streams to the server, mix the sounds, and play the unified sound, which turns out to be the composition. This realizes Cage's most profound ideals using modern technology. Okay. So there is a working version. So for the fall showcase, here's the video that they made. I think it's a 4 or 5 minute video explaining the project, the completed project. The website they created is johncagetribute.org, and you can look at their senior design final design document at ricklineker.com/jct.pdf. So it's very important that you realize their current project will be used at the Dr. Phillips Center in Orlando in April 2021. So we've already got this scheduled to be used in one of the, they're doing a whole John Cage program there. And so we're going to use this as part of it. So one of the things you got to do is make sure you don't mess up what's already working. So what is version 2? Well, the first thing that this team would have to do is support the current version and performance in April. Don't break the current software, and make sure that you're able to explain how it works to the people who are going to be performing in April. So that means you'll have to get in there and you'll have to test. You'll have to make sure it works for you. So you won't alter that current software on the server it's at now. Obviously, you're going to alter it sort of in a new fork from a GitHub fork. But what do you have to add to this software? Well, a centralized way to control sessions where you can only have one session at a time. Right now, anybody can run the app or one of the apps, or Android or iPhone, and they can start a session. So theoretically, you could have a couple dozen people recording at once, doing compositions all over the country. Unfortunately, I don't think the server is going to support that much CPU and bandwidth. So what we need to do is come up with a more centralized scheduling method. So that's one thing. That's pretty major, and so we can talk about that if you're on this project. Another thing is, right now it just does a dumb mix. I'm not saying that against that team, by the way. They did a phenomenal job. But basically, the mix is just, it layers everything on top of the same sound canvas. But what we need to do is explore different ways of mixing. And I have a number of thoughts. So what we would do is we could in our first meeting we could get together and come up with what that means for the different mixing options. Now they are using a library that does the mixing. So I would think that this would be a matter of just figuring out what we're doing and then implementing. We also need some sort of a library of varying recordings, different recordings, and so people could come and listen and see different compositions and performances that people have created. So anyway, that's what version 2 is. So what are your deliverables? Well, first deliverable is a MERN app at a domain that is not johncagetribute.org. What we'll have to do is work out another domain and another server instance. So there's no chance that the original software gets altered. We have to really think through the mixing algorithms and implement. I'm thinking we need at least 6 or 8 different mixing algorithms that either can be selected by the performers or can be selected by random. John Cage would have probably preferred to use the I-Ching to pick it. And then we need that new scheduling method where say an admin can say, okay, well the UCF performers are going to be tonight at 7 p.m. or the performers at Cincinnati Conservatory are going to be next week at 4 a.m. or whatever. I don't think they'll be doing it at 4 a.m. unless they're doing the John Cage thing and totally randomizing. We also need full instructions. We need video and PDF instructions so that in the future, like right now, I have a student who's started his master's here at UCF. So if I have to, he's a resource for asking questions. But at a certain point, there aren't going to be any more students left. So I want to make sure that anybody can just get on it and use it. We need plenty of documentation that includes the software documentation, class diagrams, things like that. And so the current project is in GitHub. What we need to do is I'm going to ask you to use GitHub because it's my GitHub, and that way we don't have to do a transfer or anything like that. So those are the main deliverables.